Truth Unveiled here, and today I have a lot of information to share with you. It has to do with Mr. Obama and the bigger agendas that are going on these past couple of weeks. Because while they have you distracted with all of the Black Lives Matter protests, there's some serious things that are going on under the table behind closed doors, and it's time you see how they're leading up to the New World Order. Now, today I'm going to be talking about some of the very cryptic things that have been going on with Mr. Obama, as well as some of the weird things he's been saying. Because I'm here at Real Clear Politics and it says, Obama, we will shape an international order that works for our people. Did you hear that? International order. Hello, what does that sound like? But let's keep going because we're briefly going to talk about the North American Leaders Summit that was held a few weeks ago, and we're going to see how that relates to some of the things that have been going on just these past few days with Dallas and everything else. Now it says here that President Obama touted the benefits of what they call globalism in a joint press conference Wednesday, and this was June 29th, 2016, with Canadian Prime Minister and Mexican President. Now, Mr. Obama says that protectionism on anti-trade arguments are prescriptions that will not work and promised that international order will help those who have been neglected by free trade. And they love talking about free trade and foreign policy. You're going to see how this relates to something else and something even deeper in just a second. But why did I keep that highlighted? Because when they talk about benefits of coming together worldwide, merging as a new world order, that's all that those puppets do, because they're all puppets hired by the Zionists to do their dirty work. And we're going to keep going. We can't disengage, Obama said about the U.S. involvement in the world. We got to engage more. And if we combine that with investments in education and tax policies that are fair and making sure that college is affordable, and we're strengthening the safety net and we're rebuilding our infrastructure, which are jobs that cannot be exported. What is absolutely true is too many folks who have been in charge around the world have neglected that side of the question, Obama said about workers negatively affected by trade agreements. So we're going to keep on pushing hard to shape an international order that works for our people, but we're not going to be able to do that by cutting off trade, because that's going to make all of us poor. But the question is, are they really talking about trade? Is Mr. Obama talking about trade, or are they talking about something even deeper than this? Like I said, briefly we'll talk more about the North American Leaders Summit so you can see the bigger agenda behind all of this. Now, as you can see, the North American Leaders Summit is an annual meeting of the heads of government for the United States, Canada, and Mexico. NALS provides the opportunity for the leaders of North America to discuss their visions for a prosperous and secure future for the citizens of all three countries and their shared commitment to work together to realize that vision. Canada will host the next NALS on June 29, 2016 in Ottawa. This summit will be an opportunity for the President of the United States, Barack Obama, and the Prime Minister of Canada, as well as the President of Mexico, to discuss key priorities aimed at creating a more integrated, sustainable, and competitive North American economy. And they just love using that word sustainable, don't they? Just like the United Nations 2030 agenda, what are they really getting ready for? Now, these are some of the things that they talked about at the latest NALS meeting, and as you can see, the main four things that they talked about is economic competitiveness, climate, energy, and the environment, regional and what they call global cooperation, and security and defense. And of course, they love talking about climate change, and you can watch my video below so you can learn the truth about climate change and be deceived no more. But we're going to briefly go over each of the four key topics that they talked about, starting with economic competitiveness. And what you're going to start to see is some very cryptic things. Now, of course, they talk about how the economies are deeply integrated, as you can see right here. And why is that so important? Is because are they getting ready for the new world order, emerging economies, and the one world currency? But then what I thought was very interesting and suspicious indeed is the fact that they're looking to create a North American cluster map. And you're going to see why this is so interesting and suspicious indeed in a second, because it says the leaders announced their commitment to establish a North American cluster map. Mexico will publicly release its national map in July, and Canada has committed to develop a national map. The maps, which will show clusters of interconnected companies, suppliers, and institutions, and be available for free online, will allow individuals, businesses, and local governments to identify investment and trade opportunities and plan economic development strategies to most strategically identify areas for investment and understand the strengths of their region. That sounds all fine and good, but when you understand the real underlying underlying cause and purpose for all of this and what the elite are really doing and what they're planning to do. Because when they say that they're interconnecting all these companies, is that another way for other companies to spy on you and I? Of course it is. And that's not the only thing that they're planning on doing, because when they enact the new world order, will it all be coming together and merging together? I hope it's making sense now. Of course, the second bullet point they talk about is climate change and the strong track record of actions to tackle climate change, because that's what they're planning to do. And they talk about how they're planning to tackle this. But what if I told you that climate change is just one great big hoax that is funded courtesy the Zionists and all the elite who are at the very top? And I'm going to leave a link for my climate change video below so that you can see more about it, so that you can see the full truth and nothing but the truth when it comes to climate change. But then they also talk about what they call regional and global cooperation, because that's what they want us to believe. But I thought it was interesting because here they even talk about the refugees, and they go on to say that Canada and Mexico, along with Ethiopia, Germany, Jordan, and Sweden, will co-host the President's Summit on Refugees in September. The goal of this summit is to increase overall humanitarian funding by 30%, double the number of resettled refugees or refugees provided other legal forms of admission, and to enroll 1 million more refugee children in school and allow an additional 1 million refugees access to employment. Now, while that may sound fine and good, when they say double the number of resettled refugees or refugees provided other legal forms of admission, that means allow more refugees in. Let's keep going. Consistent with ongoing efforts to advance the objectives of the summit, leaders announced a 10 million North American commitment to the UNHCR appeal for Central American refugees and asylum seekers. Leaders reaffirmed their commitment to encourage other UN member states to make new and significant commitments to refugee protection and assistance. But what if I told you that George Soros and all those other elites at the top, what if I told you that they're not only funding these refugees to come into certain places like Europe and others, but they're also sneaking them in to America even as we speak, courtesy DHS trucks and DHS buses and UPS planes and USPS planes and all the other ones? What if I told you that they're sneaking them in right now and placing them into FEMA camps to later be used to start and trigger more race wars and race riots and more Sandy hoaxes and other false flag events? What if I told you that that's even going on even as we speak, which is why they're pushing this agenda? Now, what's even worse about all of this is how they're committed to joint and coordinating actions to what are they trying to do? Implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, courtesy the United Nations, including the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, and I believe there are 17 of them. Don't you understand the bigger agenda behind all that? And what is the bigger agenda? Operation Depopulation. And that is exactly what they're implementing now. And we already see the building blocks of that, courtesy what we've been seeing in Dallas and with all the so-called alleged shootings that have been going on these past couple of days. But let's keep going, because they not only talk about open government partnership, or OGP, and health cooperation, but they even talk about cyber cooperation as well. And what's interesting is that they say leaders affirm the importance of an open, interpretable, reliable, and secure internet underpinned by the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance to our collective prosperity and security, and agreed to continue our foreign ministry-led trilateral cyber experts group to strengthen ongoing cooperation. And of course, some of their objectives includes international law. When it talks about international law, sounds like one world law or the new world order to me, but also to how to combat cyberbullying, because that's always the agenda. But it even says that the United States, Canada, and Mexico will work together in the 2016-2017 UN Group of Governmental Experts, the Group of 20, and the Organization of American States in support of these said objectives. Now, what's the problem with all of this is anytime that they're working with the UN and the United Nations, anytime the United Nations gets involved, some serious red flags should be ringing, because haven't we been seeing UN vehicles and United Nations trucks and military tanks and vehicles all over the place in America? Could this be tying to that? What are they really getting us ready for? And the very last bullet point that they go over is security and defense, in which they say the United States shares many mutual security and defense interests with Canada and Mexico. Threats to the continent and the hemisphere are increasingly complex and require coordinated responses. The US, Canada, and Mexico remain committed to enhancing our common understanding of those threats and developing effective, coordinated, and efficient approaches how to address them. Then they talk about drug policy. But remember, problem, reaction, solution, because what if I told you too that your government and these alphabet soups, along with those at the very top, those Zionists who are at the top, what if I told you that they fund drug trafficking with these alphabet soups like the FBI and CIA? What if I told you that they do this worldwide and they conduct this worldwide, and then they cause the problems of diseases and sicknesses, and then anyone they catch with drugs illegally, so to speak, which they're the ones responsible for, they put them into prisons, which is a big booming money business. What if I told you these things? I hope you're seeing the bigger agenda. Not to mention how they, of course, talk about peacekeeping, which, of course, reminds us of what? Peace and safety, and what comes after that. And not to mention how this was the 9th North American Leaders Summit that took place. Oh, but there's something very awkward going on because, as you will see from the Daily Mail, Obama, Trudeau, and Nieto performed an excruciating three-way handshake at the Three Amigos Summit. At least that's what they're deeming it. And this, of course, came from a couple of weeks ago. Now, as you can see, this was the handshake that they actually did. And you may be thinking absolutely nothing about it. Oh, it's just a handshake. What's the big deal? Who really cares? It's just a handshake. Well, what if I told you this has to do with Freemasonry and Freemasonic hand symbols and hand gestures? It's another Illuminati ritual based on the elite, and it's another way of telling them how they're one step closer to the new world order, literally. And I hope you're seeing that, and you're gonna see it in just a second if you already don't. Because it's official. If Washington, D.C. becomes the 51st state, it will be known as New Columbia. What a very fitting title indeed. Very interesting and suspicious indeed. And so I'm here at WAMU so that you can see the cryptic messaging behind all of this, and notice how this came out on the same day as the North American Leaders Summit. Is that a coincidence? It's not looking like it. But let's keep going, because it even says that DC is launching a renewed push for statehood and hope that next year we'll see the birth of the state of New Columbia, or more like the birth of the new world order. Is that what they're trying to say? Let's keep going. It's as thorny a question as is the proposal that's prompting it. If DC were to become the 51st state, as city officials say they will demand next year, what will the state be called? There's now an answer. And according to them, that answer is New Columbia. A D.C. commission on Tuesday evening approved the draft state constitution that will be used for the city's renewed push for statehood in the coming year, and as part of the document's text, settled on New Columbia as the name for what they hope will be the 51st state. And of course, there's been debate about it. Some argue that the name should be unchanged. Some argue that the name should be changed. And my question is, why are they even arguing and debating this at such a time as this, What is really going on? What are they really trying to tell us through this? Is it time for the New World Order, the capping of the New World Order? Because the Queen and the Pope, both of them have already told you that this was your final Christmas, but were you paying attention? Or did you just think that this was a joke? And my hope is that you did not. Now, the reason I'm showing you this, and you're probably wondering what map this is, well, this map shows you the 10 kingdoms that comes from the Club of Rome. Now, if you're wondering what the Club of Rome is, the Club of Rome is an elite organization that was founded by members of the Rockefellers back in the late 1960s, early 1970s, and they call themselves a foreign policy organization. But basically, it's an organization with all the elitists from NATO and all those politicians. And what they've done is they've divided the world into what they call 10 kingdoms of world control, and how the Zionists are going to use this to plan of world control. Now, it's interesting because as of September 17th, 1973, from the article Regionalized and Adaptive Model of the Global World System, at least that's what they want us to believe, here are the 10 kingdoms that they outline. And why I'm showing you this is so that you can see exactly how they're planning for the new world order every single day. And as you can see, this is the first kingdom here, which is what the U.S. and America. Now, of course, Mexico is with Latin America, and that's really what I wanted to show you. You can see Europe right here. You can see Russia up here. You can see China and Japan right there in Southeastern Asia, Australia right here with South Africa, and Africa right here, in Northern Africa in the Middle East over here. Now, of course, we cannot forget our favorite, which is the North American Union, which is basically Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and how they're trying to unionize into what the Amero as well as the one world currency, getting ready for the RFID biometric technology. What is the bigger agenda behind all this? But now I'm here at the CFR's website, or the Council on Foreign Relations, and I'm here at their task force report, which says building a North American community. And by the way, if you do not know who the Council on Foreign Relations is, if you are not aware of that organization, as well as the Club of Rome and the Committee of 300 and the Bilderbergers and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, I highly recommend you look that stuff up on your own time. But the reason I'm showing you this report is so that you can see how the elite are building more and more their building blocks for their new world order, and how the Zionists are doing this by trying to unionize everything together and bring everyone together, literally. It says, sponsored by the Council on Foreign Relations, or the CFR, another alphabet soup, in association with the Canadian Council of Chief Executives and the Consejo Mexicano de Asuntos Internacionales, North America is vulnerable on several fronts. The region faces terrorist and criminal security threats, increased economic competition from abroad, and uneven economic development at home. Does it, or is it all staged and planned ahead of time? Do the Zionists know, and can the Zionists control the economy behind closed doors? Let's keep going. In response to these challenges, a tri-national independent task force on the future of North America has developed a roadmap to promote North American security and advance the well-being of citizens of all three countries. And like I said, problem, reaction, solution. They create their own problems by saying, oh, there's economic dependency, or oh my goodness, there's uneven economic development, and then their own solution is to create things like this in order to further their plans of the New World Order. But it even goes on to say, when the leaders of Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. met in Texas recently, they underscored the deep ties and shared principles of the three countries. The Council-sponsored task force applauds the announced Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America, but proposes a more ambitious vision of a new community by 2010 and specific recommendations on how to achieve it. And you can only imagine how far they've gotten, because it's now 6 years after 2010. And if you would like to look at the report right here, it's actually 175 pages, which you can do on your own time. But how deep does the rabbit hole go, and just how else are they trying to advance and further advance their plans of the New World Order? Because this was reported a few weeks ago by USA Politics Today, and it says Obama says Americans having guns is worse than Islamic terrorism. And why is it even called Islamic terrorism? Because we know who the real terrorists are. But let's keep going. And it says, in an interview with Britain's BBC, President Obama said that Americans having guns and observing their Second Amendment rights is far worse than Muslim terrorism. And we know it's not Muslim terrorism. We know that these terrorists are funded by the same cabals who are behind Obama, as well as the Zionists who are behind him as well. But they'll never tell you that. Mainstream media cannot tell you that, because they're the ones who fund mainstream media as well. But it even says in the interview, Obama lamented that he has not been able to put an end to the Second Amendment, and noted that Americans are worse than terrorists. Did you hear that? Americans are worse than terrorists. You have to be able to read between the lines, because that's exactly what he is saying. By the way, if you really think that you have rights, and you have constitutional rights and your Second Amendment rights, it's time for you to seriously wake up and think again, because you never had rights to begin with. But it even says Obama's exact words, if you look at the number of Americans killed since 9/11 by terrorism, it's less than 100. If you look at the number that have been killed by gun violence, it's in the tens of thousands. And the lead up to this statement, Obama mentioned mass killings with guns, but did not mention mass killings or attempted mass killings in which those holding the guns were jihadists. Interesting. I wonder why. He said the United States of America is the one advanced nation on earth in which we do not have sufficient common sense gun safety laws. However, it is not that America does not have gun control. Rather, it is that Americans increasingly see that gun control does not stop criminals from acting out their criminality. Therefore, support for more gun laws has waned. But the reason that these gun control laws don't stop criminals is because the FBI, CIA, and all those other alphabet soups are the ones planning and staging these so-called terrorist attacks to begin with. So how can those laws stop them? I wonder what the bigger agenda really is. Because you could be a terrorist if you're even watching this video right now. You could be a serious terrorist if you're watching this right now, because that's the agenda where it's heading. Because see how they're turning the problem internally slowly but surely, because you could be a terrorist right now. And that's exactly what they're trying to do every single day. Now, I also talked about this and how Obama's pushing the gun agenda with the shootings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile. And I talk more about it in my video below, which I'm going to link below. And he even says we've got a quote serious problem. But I just wanted to share this with you so you can see how they're always pushing these bigger agendas and preparing for their new world order. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha so you can be ready for what's to come. But this is Truth Unveiled here, saying as always, Shalom.